Hello, everybody. I'm Candid Frank Stanisci of Candid Frank Live. Welcome to the Spanglish World Network on Zingo TV channel 250. Please remember to download the Zingo TV app at the respective app stores for iOS and Android devices. While you download the app, make sure you rate and leave a comment. Both apps are absolutely free. Zingo TV is available on Google Chromecast, Amazon Fire, Fire TV sticks, Roku sticks, and also on smart TVs 2016 forward. And please look for my channel, Candid Frank Stanisci, on YouTube. All right, joining me now as usual is Aaron William Freeland. Aaron, welcome to the program.
Thank you for having me, Frank.
Oh boy, oh boy. Well, having you, I don't think is what it is. I think your place here is about as. I don't think it could be any less important than my place here. So thank you for doing it every week. Aaron sets us up with what he wants to talk about, and well, I kind of do what he says. So here we go. How was your day so far?
Day's been going pretty good, actually, all things considered.
What'd you
Not too hairy.
What'd you think of
So
outside? What does outside look like to you?
right now, it's just gray. It was mostly windy, but just gray.
Here it's sunny and warm.
Oh, you're lucky.
All day it's been sunny and warm. And warm by our context, 7 degrees, 5 degrees Celsius for you Americans. All right, let's talk about hockey, and we'll start with the Maple Leafs. And after not 3 years, 2 years of I'm sorry, Aaron, I'm surprising you about this, but you probably know at the press conference after the game, there the coach said Kyle Dubas is going to talk to the league about the penalties that Michael Bunting is taking. I said
Uh,
this for the last couple of years. The Leafs got to do that, and they got to go public because some of the stuff that goes on is ridiculous. They lost a playoff series in the seventh game, and the goal that won the game was ignoring two obvious penalties by the Tampa Bay team, and the Leafs lost the series because of that one series of plays.
it's you have mentioned it before, and I know uh, a lot of people have been saying online the Leafs need to talk to the league about this because there's something funny that's going on here. I believe the word that some chose to use was hinky. There's something hinky going on here. Now, here's the thing. They're like, talk to the league, talk to the league, talk to the league, talk to the league. All of a sudden, the Maple Leafs are like, we're going to go talk to the league. Bunch of whiners, bunch of whiners, bunch of whiners. Pick one. You know, it's
Aaron, here's the way I see it. Here's the way I see it. People can accuse me of being. They can accuse me of being pro Toronto. You can do that. You can do that. You can accuse me of that, and I'll cop to it. That I am pro Toronto. I'm not pro Maple Leafs. I'm pro Toronto. I'm pro the fans. And the fans have been jobbed by the National Hockey League for years. For years. Remember, this is the team that played in the Western Division, and it was further east than Buffalo. But there's a correlation here. Because Buffalo could not afford to handicap their fans by having games at 11 o'clock at night instead of 8 o'clock. Remember, that was back when the games were at 8 o'clock, never mind 7:30. It was only New York that was doing the games at 7:30. So anyway, so Leaf games were on at 11 o'clock during the week. That was a handicap to the team as far as fans following the team, which means if they can't follow the team, how can they be loyal to the team? So the Leafs made that sacrifice, all right? And it's okay. Why? The same reason why the officiating is kind of crappy for them. And I don't care what anybody says, it is crappy for them because they're the team that financially can use or take this kind of abuse. You can't do this to a struggling team who's trying to build a fan base. But if you have a big fan base and you can kick them in the shin a little bit and give a little advantage elsewhere, it doesn't hurt as much. And that's my point as far as the Maple Leafs are concerned. They're too big to fail. But here's what I'm talking about. It's not fair to the fans. Just because the Maple Leafs have one of the biggest fan bases doesn't mean that they get to be treated with disrespect. And the National Hockey League has been disrespectful to the Toronto Maple Leaf fans for decades. I will never forget the Broad Street Bullies coming into Toronto, and you're seeing a bit of what we're talking about. This is a little bit of a repetition of what happened back then. Rod Sealing coming out of the corner, all bloodied. And anybody who knows who Rod Sealing is and understands that Team Canada player in 72, the kind of player he was, as clean as they come, bloodied, and there were no penalties. And this is the thing. This is the thing that I fight. It's not for the Maple Leafs. Hell with the Maple Leafs. I don't care about the Maple Leafs. I care about Toronto. I care about the people who are paying customers to the National Hockey League. And that's what I care about. And that's why I'm applauding Kyle Dubas saying what he's saying and doing what he's doing. I'll add this too, Aaron, as the final part of my rant. Ask any player. I bet you if you could talk to a player and have him talk to you honestly without fear of being repeated, ask any player who's played a long time on other teams and then come to Toronto and played in Toronto for a year or two or three or a few anyway, and ask them, if they didn't have it, ask them, what do you think of the officiating Toronto gets? I guarantee you they would say it's kind of funky. Like, there's stuff I can't do here that I did over there. There's stuff I've seen that can't be done here by this team, but can be done by other teams elsewhere. And that's something that my experience, and I've seen it happen over and over and over again. He got a 10-minute misconduct for kicking a stick.
There are some folk that are saying that apparently he spat on somebody. That I dispute. Nobody has so far shown me proof. I asked somebody for proof of that on there, like, trust me, bro. Like, yeah, you know, it's.
Did the referees? I don't remember if the referees announced what the 10-minute misconduct was for.
No, they don't have to.
Gross misconduct.
No, so
unsportsmanlike conduct. It usually has a tag.
Well, this one I think was unsportsmanlike, 10-minute unsportsmanlike conduct.
Then and that's what he did with the stick. He did that. See, this is the red herring. This call is the red herring. It's what happened before that causes a player. This is the Nazem Kadri effect that you've heard me talk about with Nazem Kadri, right? With against the Boston Bruins. They were taking liberties on the Leafs, and when he took liberties, it was punishable by a suspension. Whereas if the Bruins did it, it wasn't suspendable. In fact, it wasn't even a penalty. Punching the captain of the Toronto Maple Leafs after the whistle blows in a scrum by the exit gets no penalties. If your name's Chara, you get free shots at the Leaf captain. So you see, this is what I'm talking about. Now, people can say whatever they want about hating the Toronto Maple Leafs. People who live in Toronto can hate the Toronto Maple Leafs. It's not about the Toronto Maple Leafs for me. It's about the customers who deserve value for their dollar as well. They should not be handicapped to enjoy a Stanley Cup because the league figures there's too many Leaf fans. And that's my point, and that's what it is, because they think the Leafs can afford the handicap of being given shoddy officiating.
I noticed that just before he got his misconduct with 2 seconds left in the second period, Bunting also served 2 minutes for embellishment. Now, I happened to see this particular play, and I'm not sure where the referee is coming up with this, but it used to be that Bunting on a relatively consistent basis drew penalties because he was a jerk and he got people riled up. Now, more often than not, that has been negated by the fact that whenever he draws a penalty, he's usually going to the box with that person because the referees have somehow managed to find fault. I've been cross-checked from behind before. I've fallen exactly the same way that Bunting has fallen before. I don't embellish, and neither does he. There's no point. The referees know when you're embellishing. You know, this calling this penalty so that Jake Wallman goes off for cross-checking and Michael Bunting serves with him is the biggest pile of horse pucky that I've ever seen.
But, you know, when it comes to embellishment, right? Embellishment is a call that you make because somebody is doing something and you're inventing it. You're creating an invention. Embellishment to me is when a guy waves a stick in your face, misses it by that much, and you go,
oh, you mean like the Chuck did when they played against Florida and Luke Schenn punched him in the shoulder and reacted like he'd been punched in the teeth?
Exactly. Was there my point is, was there an embellishment call there?
Not on that one.
But you can get cross-checked in the back and it's called embellishment. I understand when you trip somebody and they barely lose their ability to stand and they flop to the ice. Like we've seen it in soccer all the time. the point that I'm not going to speak for you. I'm going to say for myself. The point I'm trying to make is the guy cross-checked him twice. If that was an embellishment call on the second cross-check, there should have been 2 cross-checking penalties and 1
No, for sure.
embellishment call. But that's the whole point, is that as far, and this is, I maintain this, and I'll maintain this, like I said, the Leafs are the only team that played in the East that was in the West Division, and they weren't the furthest West team. That doesn't happen unless somebody figures, well, why did Toronto go to the West Division? Why wasn't it Buffalo? This is my point. End of story. You can say, people can BS till the cows come home. But the fact is, the Maple Leafs played in the Western Division while Buffalo played in the Eastern Division, and they were further west. They made a conscious decision to ignore the map and put Toronto in the West Division. I can tell you why they did it, but that's another story for another day.
Now, the other thing that I'm wondering about that came out of this game against Detroit that they lost 5-2 was Murray getting his skates taken out from behind by Lucas Raymond. Now, it did seem that Lucas did fall, and I can't dispute that. He was on his butt when he slid through Matt Murray's legs from behind and knocked his helmet off the ice. You know, that should have been goaltender interference at minimum.
Absolutely.
So Murray is out again. Samsonov is now going to be forced into more work. And now we've also got to worry about bringing up Woll and Shelgren, while at the same time the Marlies are getting ready for their playoff run. You know, something like this just, it needs to be looked at. And
Can I ask you a question about that specific situation?
Yeah.
Why is it sometimes it doesn't matter that why is it sometimes officials make a decision on whether something is intentional or not?
Yeah, see, that I really can't speak to, because it lends to, again, the further confusion surrounding goaltender interference and what exactly is it anyways. You know, so it's one of those things.
If a goal is scored and a player accidentally interferes with the goaltender making the save, does the goal count?
No, it doesn't. Well, actually, no, it depends. If the goal is being scored on the Leafs, then the goal definitely
Okay, we're really going down that road, aren't we? We're really drilling down into this one. But just for the folks who don't like the Maple Leafs, who hate the Maple Leafs, the point I wanted to make was that if a player interferes with a goaltender while trying to make a save, there is no judgment. They don't say, well, did he do it on purpose? The question becomes, because the goaltender is such a critical player and critical in the play of a goal or not, they don't decide based on what they think the guy was thinking. What they think about is the same thing they do and they're supposed to do with high sticking. You're supposed to control your stick. That player should control where he goes. If he ends up under the goaltender, and he could have, we don't know yet, he could have caused a major injury to that goaltender. Now, what happens in the playoffs? Somebody decides to trip and take a goalie out like that. Is it a penalty?
You know, then you look at that particular Leaf player who got 6 games for his first accidental knee. You know, I think we know how this is going to go.
Well, at the end of the day, I'm a Toronto kid, and I love Toronto people. I love the town. I love the city. But I can tell you, this isn't bias against the National Hockey League. This is experience that I have watching the way the league operates. It's as long as I can remember, has operated this way. Back when Ballard owned the team, they could get away with it because Ballard had no credibility. And, you know, as I said, the main reason I think it is that they think Toronto can afford the bad calls, so they will lean on them. If a team that's struggling ends up, you know, losing fans because they're not playing well because they're being leaned on, let's say, let me give you an example. Let's say you think they'd ever put Arizona in the Eastern Division on any terms?
No. No, there was a second part to getting the Leafs into the Western Division in the first place, and that was also at the time the Western Division was perceived as the weaker division, so that was also a way for Ballard to ensure that his Leafs would make the playoffs. it didn't work out that way because the Leafs
What
were
I,
just
what
an
I,
absolute tire fire.
what I'll tell you, Aaron, is the reason the Leafs went into the Western Division is because the Montreal Canadian owner loaned Ballard money so that he could hang on to the team. So the Montreal Canadiens made sure that Ballard maintained control of the team by lending him money because there was a mortgage payment due. And the Montreal Canadian owner gave it to Ballard so that Ballard could stay in power. Can you say conflict of interest? And this is why I say historically, the Toronto Maple Leaf fans, not the team. I don't care about the team because the team gets rich regardless. Instead of making $1.1 million, they make $1 million. But they're making that money, some money that other teams can't make. And I just put a figure there. That's just an arbitrary number that I'm just tossing out there. So these are historical facts that cannot be denied. And they're evidence of Toronto sports fans, Toronto hockey fans, being given a disadvantage. And I applaud. And what they should do, what Dubas should do, is he should go there and show the last goal of the playoffs last year, where there are 2 penalty calls that weren't obvious penalty calls that were being called in that series, not called in that game. And the goal was scored. And even if I'm not mistaken, wasn't that also the same game where an interference penalty was called and the Leafs didn't get a goal because of the interference?
That's correct.
2 identical calls. Yes, on the Leafs a penalty, no on Tampa a penalty. That's it. That one moment, that one piece of tape is what Dubas should bring there. That's it. And say, look, we don't think we're getting a fair shake. Here's the proof. And then they should go public and then accept whatever fine they get, because it's time for Toronto sports fans to be defended and treated fairly, and they're not. The hatred that people have for Toronto is something that I repudiate. It's something that disgusts me, and I'm a Toronto boy, and I'll always be that. I don't live there anymore, but my heart will always be in Toronto, and I've seen the pain and suffering that those people have gone through because of this league.
And it's interesting. The Maple Leafs were the last team this year to get a 5-on-3 power play advantage. The time between their most recent and the one that finally broke the streak for them, 63 games into the season, there was a gap of 72 games between 2-man power play advantages. And there have been plenty of cases where we could have been up 5-on-3 for extended periods of time, but stuff doesn't get called.
They have to show the proof, and Dubas has to get his replay guys to go in there and show the league a bunch of tape, because and you have to frame it in a way saying, now we're going to be playing in the playoffs again, and we see what's happened in the past, and if it's repeated, then it's on you. Because now you can't deny it's going on, and the intimidation and bullying by Gary Bettman cannot scare the Leaf organization. They have a responsibility to their fans, to their customers. If they feel in their hearts the Leafs are being treated unfairly, which I know they are, considering how they went out of the playoffs last year, then they should do something about it. They owe it to the customers. And if the customers are not being treated fairly, and it's provable, and it can be shown that they were jobbed of the playoffs last year, if someone could say, look at this tape, and someone says, you know what, the Leafs were jobbed in that game. If they can say that, there's something really wrong in the National Hockey League to allow something like that to happen. And like you and I always say, it depends what team it happens to.
Situationally dependent.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, that was an interesting tirade. I hope I didn't use up the whole time of the show. No, I
got about 2 minutes, I think.
2 minutes, 3 minutes. Okay, go with the Habs.
All right, so let's take a look at what exactly happened here. They've been struggling for a while. The Hurricanes won 3-0 over the Habs, which is furthering their cause in getting Connor Bedard, which is all well and good. We need the extra competition here. Stanisci had a golden assist, and Antti Raanta got his 4th shutout of the season. So that was good to see. Always enjoyed that.
How about those Sens?
Oh, those Sens. Well, the good news is, they were kind enough to lose to us 3-0. that helped us move towards clinching a playoff spot. And then they helped themselves again by losing 4-3 in overtime to the Blue Jackets on the Sunday. Marchenko's goal in overtime was what got them the win.
How about Jets?
So Devils look like they're sitting back a little bit now that they've clinched a playoff spot already. The Jets needed the win to try to keep themselves alive when it comes to a wild card spot. So yeah, they managed to turn it up and beat the Devils 6-1. So that was good.
How about the Flames?
Well, they're barely keeping themselves alive at this point, man. I'm not even sure how they're doing it, but yeah, they managed to secure a win, 5-4, and keep their playoff hopes alive.
How about the Canucks?
Well, the Canucks helped the Kings to wrap up a playoff spot. That was, it wasn't necessarily what we were hoping for, but, for Vancouver fans out there, there is light at the end of the tunnel. They are slowly working themselves back down into the bottom 30. So, they'll have an opportunity to go for Bedard. They're currently sitting in 25th, so they can potentially move all the way up to first.
How about the Oilers?
The Oilers managed to seal themselves a playoff berth by beating the Ducks 6-0. The Ducks seem to be helping both Calgary and Edmonton this particular road trip. So as it currently stands, the Edmonton Oilers have secured themselves a spot. The Flames are just barely on the outside looking in, right behind Winnipeg and Seattle. That is actually shaping up to be really tight. Seattle's got 90 points, Winnipeg has 89, and Calgary has 87. So.
Hey, the Riders sign off. Alford, right? Yeah, Alford.
Yeah, they Vanstone Alford finally found a spot for himself. I don't think it's so much finally found a spot as I think they finally realized what they got their hands on here. It's actually fantastic for him because he's a really good offensive player. He's got really fantastic cuts. I'm glad to see him back.
Absolutely. How about those Stamps?
Oh, those Stamps are at it again. They've actually signed Mike Moore. Glad to see him back as well. He's played 70 career regular season and playoff games with Ottawa, Edmonton, and Montreal, and was a West Division All-Star in 2019. And last year led the Alouettes in sacks. So he's coming over to the Calgary Stampeders.
Okay, Aaron, that calls it. You just called it. Way to go. Way to rush down through those stories.
Perfect. Thanks a lot, Frank.
For everyone at Freeland, I'm Candid Frank Stanisci. Thank you for watching Candid Frank Live. This show can also be heard on the Spanglish World Radio Network for CFL Talk News. Candid Frank Live, news and entertainment, and other sports programming we offer. Please check out SpanglishWorld.ca. Spanglish World. Watch it, hear it, read it, download it, and live it. Thanks for watching, everybody. I'm Candid Frank.